All right, let's start. So we're live for this Sopra Banking Software webinar series on how a design system can reshape your digital banking experience. I'm delighted to be here today. I'll be your host, and I'm the Director of Product Design here at Sopra Banking for our design offering. Now, I started my career working for a Six Sigma company. And we all have good and bad stories about our first job and how it influenced our business vision. But one thing that did stuck with me is to always want to deliver the best outcome the most efficiently. So if you are like me and you absolutely hate spending valuable business time on low value activities, then I hear you there. And this talk will be covering plenty of that. So we delivered this webinar actually earlier this year at our kickoff event internally. And we got so much great feedback that we decided to come back on here and share it with our industry. I am being joined today by a guest. He's a brilliant novelist, a design leader, and a design transformation coach, Brian Hurdley. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Christelle. Thank you.
So, for those who do not know Brian has 25 years experience within the design industry. And among some of his achievements is set up the customer lab at Lloyd's Banking Group, but he's also transformed the digital experience at EE. So a bit of timekeeping here. So I'll explain how the webinar is going to run. We first have a conversation with Brian to try to understand a bit more about design system. Then we'll share a video of how our design system at Sopra Banking work, and that will give you a bit of the test of what it can do. And then finally, we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So if you have questions, please use the tab on the right corner of your screen that is called questions, and we'll try to answer them at the end. So, but before we start, I'll start quizzing Brian to get some of his insights. What I wanted to do is kind of explain why at Sopra Banking we are investing into a design system. And the truth is because our business is about people. It's about the people who makes our product. It's about the people that we serve. And now they can be really diverse. They can be people who use our product 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, as well as people who use our product to check their daily banking. And that's why at the heart of our digital strategy, we put our design strategy. And at the heart of our design strategy, we've put a design system. We wanted to bring it all together because we have such a large number of offering and such a diverse population to serve. And so design systems, along with our design center of excellence, are at the heart of our strategy. And by the way, if you are interested, in a few days, we'll be posting some roles on our job board, and we'll share the link at the end. So bear with us. So let's crack on. And I guess my first question for you, Brian, is going to be very simple. What is a design system? Can you help us demystifying what a design system is?
Sure, Christelle. So a design system, really at a very high level, is a system that enables you to bring about more consistency in your customers' experiences through the design of your user interfaces for your products, for your website. And at the same time, if done right and done well, can help also bring about efficiency in how you go about conducting your design and also delivering or developing the code for your products. At a very base level, design systems, they've been around in some form or another for a very long time, actually. So at a very base level, they can be, in the old days, they were just organized design files. So it was a file that a designer pulled together that had some consistent look and feel in it, some consistent style to it. We're probably all familiar with things like style guides, so tone of voice style guides, design style guides that look into things like, color, grids, typography. Those form part of a design system. A more mature design system contains the guidelines that basically tell you how to design. They contain style guides which tell you more about your typography and your color and your spacing, your grid spacing for different types of devices, for instance. They contain a design pattern library, and the design pattern library contains your patterns, elements, and components in design form that can be interrogated in terms of size and shape and color and that sort of thing. And then all the way out to a code library or a code repository, which holds coded versions of the components, which can be in a single framework or in some instances in a multiple frameworks. All of this is governed. So you need to have, wrap good governance around a design system to ensure that, the standards are quite high and the quality is quite high. You can refine the work that's in a design system through research, continually feeding back into how you revise and update the design system. And it's a good opportunity to bring together teams like marketing, product, design, development, content, and research in a way that enables them to work together to actually create a system that they all work from.
Yeah, and actually, I completely agree with that. When we started our journey to build our design system at Sopra Banking, one of the first things that we've done was actually to sit down with our marketing team, our product team, our technology team to establish our vision and our strategy. And I think it's really important to think about the design system as not just owned by designer, but owned by multiple teams. One of the things that mattered to us, for example, when we start talking with all of those teams, was to establish design principles within our design system that would be fit for our business strategy. And example, one of our design principles is to be adaptive. We want our products to obviously be white label because our clients will put their own identity on our products. So it was important that all the components of our design system could be easily customized by our clients.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that's, I'll touch on that in a little bit, but that's definitely a key element when you consider the audience of the product, the design system itself. So. And
so, what would you say then are the key benefits of a design system?
There's a number of benefits depending on the size and shape, I suppose, of the organization. One of the probably key or high level benefits is that design systems create a single source of truth in the organization. So it's a place where no matter what discipline you work with, what team you work in, there's always a place that you can go in the organization to understand how we design, what our principles are, how we how we approach the active design, and it actually enables people to gain a better understanding of how the organization as a whole comes together to present itself through its products to its customers. There are a number of other benefits, obviously, around brand alignment. So you talked about developing white label. So for organizations that are delivering B2C or B2B facing design systems, they brand alignment can be quite key because you want your brand to be represented in the right way. And you want it to be consistent across the experience for your customers. Content, you always want content to follow a consistent tone of voice. That's an area where you need to understand things like literacy and readability. So having consistent tone of voice and tone of voice guidelines is important, and that can reside in your design system. Again, from earlier, consistent look and feel. So having a consistent unified UI is very important, so customers actually know how things work when they engage with them. Code libraries obviously can enable consistent development and faster development, and efficiency is a key for both design and development, because the more effort you put into your design system, working these days in agile delivery teams, the more quickly your design and development teams can actually build and deploy products, because they have that single source of truth to continually go back to, and things that are already built and thought through. It also enables designers to begin to engage in more strategic work, because it frees them up from the production line aspect of design, because that bit is done in the design system, and that bit is already thought through. So they can actually come up in altitude and start thinking more strategically about journeys. They can start thinking about customer experience and engagement, and also start thinking more strategically about your products and features and services. And finally, quality. Quality is really key, because design systems, what they'll do is they'll enable you, because you have a pre-built set of components and a pre-built set of designs and patterns. Those will all be done to a certain standard, which means you're always deploying that same standard every time you deploy those patterns or those components in your products. So those would be the key benefits that I can see.
Yeah, and to put this into context, I think the element around spending more strategic time on design was one of our key motivation at Sopra Banking Software. And although we were quite aware that design system, to get to the full benefits, you're in here for a long run. What we were not too sure is how fast we will get benefits from implementing a design system. And for the first product that has used our design system, which is our ethical digital debt management product, we were astonished by the speed at which we were able to produce designed screens. I think it took us about 3 days to produce over 100 screens across web, tablets, and mobile. And well, without the design system, this would have taken us weeks. What it allowed us to do was to actually spend more time co-designing the product with customer, and in that case, with vulnerable customer. And it's something which is very well known. So for product, the audience matters a lot. But when it comes to design system, how important would you say is the audience, Brian?
I think it's very important in terms of how you tackle the level of design and how you're working within that system. So, for instance, earlier you mentioned white label products. So for a white label product, what you want is a nice, clean, simple, look and feel, because the reality is that your clients are going to be customizing the look and feel in their own brand look and feel. They're going to use their own tone of voice guidelines. So what you're going to want is you're going to want things that from a design point of view, from a heuristic point of view, are as good a quality set of components as you can possibly define. But you're not going to go hugely far in terms of the UI design, so the visual design of those components to a brand, to a brand degree. So if on the other hand you're developing your design system to work with B2C and B2B users, and Sopra of course will have B2B users in the sense of back office platforms and systems. then you are going to want to put more effort into your UI look and feel. You probably are going to want to be more brand aligned. You're obviously going to want to have things that from a sales and marketing perspective, you can show to the market to show what you can do in the sense of your systems and how you work. So knowing who you're designing for in that sense is very important. Is a very important aspect. But there are more things to that. There's knowing the channels that those users use. So you want to know, are they purely digital channels? Within digital, are they mobile? Are they tablet? Are they desktop? What markets do your users reside in? So knowing if you're if your markets are in places where for instance you have slow broadband, you need to take into account when you're designing. You don't want to design things that are too whizzy, too significant amounts of interaction and too over designed. What you want is to design for simplicity, usability, but you also want to design always for accessibility. You need to be thinking, in that space about, users who, have sight issues, who maybe have mobility issues. Quite often users with mobility issues are overlooked when we talk about accessibility because people think sight straight away. So those things need to be taken into account. Who are the types of users that are going to be using your products? You need to consider vulnerability. When you're designing, when you're assembling these components in your design system, are you assembling them in a way that meets their needs if they are potentially vulnerable? And you should always use research to help shape your thinking, because between market segmentation, telling you who your users are and breaking those down into specific segments, and qualitative research, which shows you how your users are engaging with the elements that you have in your design system, you'll be able to actually shape over time a better set of components and a better set of experiences for your users.
Yeah, and I think this is vulnerability and accessibility, something which is very close to my heart, being myself dyslexic. But I think that was one of the reasons why at Sopra Banking Software we've decided that inclusive was one of our design pillars for all of the reasons that you just mentioned, Brian. Because we've got markets where broadband is not always that great, but we've also have markets which are hyper digitalized, and I think it's something like for every 3 seconds it takes to load a page, you lose 5% of your traffic in the UK. So it's really important that you make your design light enough so then our products are performant. So the other thing that was a key part of our journey when it comes to design system has been to choose our tooling. And we thought that the tooling strategy was something really important. What would you say are the key things to be considered when it comes to tooling?
So when it comes to tooling, and what we're talking about here is design tools. So tools used to actually create the UX and the visual elements for the product pattern library, the product pattern library itself, and your code component repository software. So there's a mix of software involved in that. There's also software that sits around the edges. So quite often in the past I've used things like Miro and Mural, and the reason we use those in the context of something like a design system is to build collaboration. So having tooling that enables collaboration between the teams while they're formulating their thinking around the direction of the design system is as important, I think, as the tools that you use in the design system itself. So why are tools important? Tools can lock you into a direction if you're not careful, if you don't choose them carefully enough. So what you need to think about is that a design system is an ongoing thing. It's ever evolving. You'll always continue to add new things to it, new components, new variants. maybe a new code component library. You may end up having a new code framework, a front-end framework that you want to add to it. There's always going to be something that changes. Maybe the company goes through a rebranding exercise and you need to rebrand all of your components. So what you want is you want a tool set that is actually quite flexible, and also allows you to scale and evolve over time. You don't want to be locked into a tool set that if something changes down the road, if a new, better tool comes along, for instance, and this happens, then your current design system is locked into your existing software. So you want flexibility and scalability in your software. You want to choose software that integrates well together. So, for instance, your design tools, your product pattern library, and your code repository. It would be good, obviously, if those things can sync together, so that if you make a change, for instance, in your design styling, that can be carried all the way through your product pattern library into your code repository through CSS. So you actually have the ability to make dynamic changes all along the way. So that's quite important. I think one of the key things that a lot of people don't think about is engagement with the system. So whatever you use should enable other teams in the organization to be able to access it, to view it, to engage with it. If they don't, then it just becomes this thing that sits on the side that only that group of people use over on the side. And what you really want is you want a system that sits more at the core of your business, that more people know about, that more people engage with, and more people know exist, because when they know it exists, it starts to really embed it as that single source of truth in terms of your design direction. And I guess the last thing I want to say is, particularly given the times that we live in the age of pandemic, tools that enable remote access and seamless working are really key. So tools that are in the cloud will obviously give you a lot more flexibility in terms of teams working from home, or teams working remotely, or teams working multi-country. So those are things that you need to consider.
Yeah, and I completely echo that, and particularly the part around the closed loop. I know this is something that you are passionate about. It's the end of life of a product. I call it the exit strategy. Now, it's a bit odd when you start a partnership with a product to start thinking at the end. It's a bit like you're preparing for your wedding and you're already thinking, oh, what will I have to do if I want to get divorced? But it's so key. There were definitely tools out there that looked great in the sense that they did the all-in-one. But for us, they were just not working, because we want to collaborate with our clients, obviously. We want to share file with them. We have multiple design agencies within our group, CX partners, obviously, in the UK, but we've got also Soprasteria Design in Spain, in the UK, in Norway, and our design capabilities are spread across like London, Paris, Munich, or Dubai. And for us, that was really key, to make sure that everyone could work together. And if something better came along, we don't want to have to redo it all over again. So now, also being a technology company, a key thing for us had been the front-end technology. Was that an overkill from our side to be thinking about that, or do you think it's important?
No, I think front-end technology is important. I mean, going back to something I said earlier around the channels and platforms that you are delivering for, so the types of customers that you're delivering for. You need to know if you're developing components for native mobile, for instance, or if you're going to be working in a responsive web environment, so you're going to be looking at responsive mobile, tablet, and web. You need to understand the front-end technologies that are used within the organization. So some organizations standardize around a single framework for the front end, but some organizations actually have multiple frameworks within the organization. So I think, on the front-end technology side, particularly around the code component library, you really need to plan from the beginning, and you should be thinking from the beginning about, how you're going to position your design system and how far out your design system is going to extend into the development environment. Mature design systems deliver code libraries, so you would expect a mature design system to have code repositories with it. And in fact, there are many of us that think that it's not really a design system until it contains a code component library, and that really completes it. That becomes the important sort of bookend to it. As I said, knowing the frameworks is important. IBM Carbon is an example. They use, their design system, Carbon, has components built in, React, Angular, and Vue. So, so they actually are building, for multiple front-end frameworks, which is good, if that's the way they work. Coding for accessibility is important. So I think, again, when you're building a design system, as I said earlier, things around accessibility and vulnerability are important. And if you plan to code all these components, from scratch to match your product pattern library, you want to build in, all of the thinking around, coding for accessibility in those components. Now, what's good about that is that once you've built them, if they're built in the right way, when you deploy them, you're deploying one to many. So you're actually building it once, getting it right once, but you're potentially deploying it many, many, many times across your products. So you have certainty that the things that you're deploying are accessible. They do meet the right kinds of standards, and that's really important. I think so I think the technology is important. I think it's key to have people from the development team involved in the process from the beginning. Because I think they become a core integral part of delivering the system as a whole. So yes, so you weren't wrong to think about it that way.
Good to know, but that wasn't an overkill. Okay, so I think we are kind of running out of time. So I still have so many questions for you. So I'm hoping that they'll be asked by the audience, but I'll ask a last one. How do you convince people to invest into a design system?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Well, last one.
Yeah, so convincing people to invest. I mean, I think the thing about design generally is in many organizations people often don't fully understand the business benefit of design, even if they understand that design is important. So what I mean by that is that what the C-suite are used to talking about, or they're used to talking about operational cost savings. They're used to talking about ROI. They're used to talking about lots of measures and metrics and numbers that they use to help define and drive the business, right? So I think because design has quite often lagged in many organizations, it often doesn't have those numbers in place. And therefore, I think getting to a point where you actually can drive metrics around design will help educate people in the organization as to what design can do for the organization from a measurable point of view. I think I think there are other factors as well. I think maturity of the organization and design within the organization are important factors. If it's a mature organization but design is immature, you have convincing to do. In some organizations, design is quite a mature function, and therefore this is really a next step for a lot of organizations, is to drive operational efficiency into the way they deliver design, freeing up time for more strategic thinking. So it makes more sense in those organizations. I think the other thing design teams need to do if they want to bring people along the journey with them to get investment, they need to demystify the design process. So you need to expose how design works, not just show the end artifacts, because that's all people often think that design does. But design is actually a process. Design is has method. There are models that design follows. So expose that to more people in the organization, bring them on the journey with you, so that they actually understand when you talk about making what you do more efficient, they actually start to see in the process where those efficiencies can be gained and what that might mean in terms of delivering products and features. You need to create advocates and evangelists. You do that by exposing people and getting them involved in your process. You need to identify a C-suite level sponsor. I think having somebody in the C-suite who can sponsor the activity, who can sponsor, your vision around, driving efficiency in design, consistency in design, is really important, because they'll go to bat for you with the rest of the C-suite. And of course, for me, it does get back to KPIs and data and metrics. Build a business case. It's easy these days to build a business case to drive investment into a design system. There's a lot of good research on the internet. There are a lot of good examples. Westpac, Bulb, Stripe, IBM, Google. You name it. We spent a lot of time looking at all their design systems and doing a lot of benchmarking. And I think those kinds of activities actually really help you to build a case when your organization can see that competitor organizations are doing it and they're getting benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It always comes down to numbers, unfortunately, but that's the beauty of it. Okay, so we're coming out of a question time now. What we wanted to do is share a short clip video that kind of showcase our design system. So what we've chosen at Software Banking is to use Zero Hive as our pattern library and Figma as our design tool. So we'll play the short video now. And we'll come back for the questions.
Hello, my name is Ross. I was part of the team that worked on the SBS product pattern library. I'm going to give you a little demo, what you can do, and how you can use it in your projects. Welcome to Figma. Figma is a powerful tool that lets you design, prototype, and collaborate. We've used Figma to build our design system, so if you're designing products and pages using the pattern library, then you'll be working in Figma. The pattern library helps take out a lot of the repetition, inconsistency, and uncertainty of designing products. Time's a bit limited, so let's jump straight in and start designing a page. When someone starts a new project, all they need to do is activate the SBS product pattern library, and they'll then have access to the components and styles we've built, with all of the customization that we've designed into them. We'll start with a frame. Next, let's add a header and a footer. All of our components are resizable to fit the size of the screen you're designing for. So if we're doing a mobile design, there's either a mobile specific component or the main version can be scaled down. Our components also have lots of variation built into them. Here we've switched to a header without an app switching menu and a footer minus the links. Now let's put in some additional navigation. Since we know we're going to have the side navigation, we'll need an offset grid to help keep our layout consistent. The pattern library comes with loads of documentation, so there's detail on there about when and how to use every component and style we've created. Let's add a breadcrumb link, a heading. The pattern library defines a spacing scale, so elements can be spaced both vertically and horizontally. Next, we'll add a table. There are different versions of the table to allow different densities of information, large for low density and small for higher densities. The tables, like other components, can be easily resized, and you can simply add or remove both rows and columns. Let's add some pagination. Let's add a side panel. Define the margins as small. Add a subtitle. Maybe a text input field. And a button. All somebody using the pattern library sees is a single button in their assets panel, but the buttons have loads of customization built into them. It's responsive, it's editable, it has various types, primary, secondary, tertiary, and various states, default, hover, focus, and so on. If you want to customize it further, you can add an icon, all while retaining that flexibility and editability. Another powerful feature of the pattern library is how easily it can be customized. The master version of any component can be accessed pretty simply. Making a change to the master version will apply that change anywhere an instance of that component is used. A simple thing we could do to customize the pattern library globally would be to change the primary color. Let's say we're mocking up a design for a client and their primary color is red. We simply update the color in the pattern library, publish it, go back to our design file, and accept the updates. Everywhere that primary colour is used will be updated. There's a whole lot more in here, but hopefully this gives you an idea of the power of a design system. Okay, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Cool. Thank you. So I guess we're going to take some questions now. So let me just check. Okay. Well, this is a good question to start. How do you get started? Do you want to take that one, Brian? Oh, Brian, you're on mute.
There we go. Somehow I got muted. So how do you get started? So the first thing you need to do really is you need to identify and task people with delivering your foundational system. So you need to identify a range of people, which will come from design, content, copy, development, and potentially even product, just to come together in order to identify the goals around the system. You need to, you always need to, involve, as I said, a cross-functional team. And the reason you do that is because you want buy-in later. So you want people who are going to be using it to be a fundamental part of designing how it's going to work and function, and designing how it's going to work within their disciplines in the business. A good place to start in terms of having a team in place is to begin inventorying. So pick a product, a section of your website, pick something that you already have, and conduct an inventory. So inventory all the elements and patterns and components that exist within that thing that you've chosen, and pull all of those together and begin to assess them and deduplicate them and group them. So some sites I've seen and some products I've seen over time, it's really surprising when people do the inventory, when they start to group and they start to find they've got 6 versions of an accordion, they've got 12 different button types, they've got 4 different drop downs. And this gives you an opportunity to begin to consolidate all of that into single components, one component that actually works across each of those, and replaces them. So instead of having 4, you have 1. So that's a good place to start. Alongside of that, I would say doing a bit of competitive benchmarking doesn't go amiss. I've looked in the past at some of the ones I mentioned earlier. Google Material Design, IBM Carbon, Stripe, Westpac. There's Atlassian. There's a whole host of companies out there that publish their design systems, publicly. So you actually have the opportunity to go in and see how they've structured their design system. What do they document in their design system? How do they approach, are there, is it just a pattern library? Is it, style guides in a library? Are there coded components? So you get an opportunity to kind of get a feel for what's right for you. So you choose the approach that's best for your organization at that point in time. The other thing, as you then progress, you want to create a set of principles. So, even creating a set of design principles for the design system that kind of govern how you then approach the activity and the work can be really important to, to ensuring that you move ahead with consistency, the kind of consistency that you want. You'll also, reference brand guidelines and figure out how brand guidelines are going to, fit into the work that you're doing. Consider colors, consider the typography you're going to use, grid systems and spacing. So all of that, bring all of that into it. And then, you can look at models like atomic design, and, there are lots of, different models out there about how you then, break your design patterns down, your elements and your patterns and your components. Think about the most granular levels to which you want to create patterns for your design system, and then how those things group together, and then how those groups then group together to form larger components. So start thinking about that ecosystem and the level to which you want to go. And the last thing I'd say is have fun with it. It's a good collaborative project. It's a way to bring together different disciplines in the organization. And, it's the kind of thing that the benefit of it is that, you're going to be delivering something into the organization that really allows your products to become more consistent experiences for your customers. And that, that can't be a bad thing, really. So, yeah.
Hey, well, I've got a very tricky one. What are some potential pitfalls that come with design systems?
Pitfalls. Yeah, there's a few, I think. So, what I was saying about, choosing an approach that works for your org. When you start out, don't try to over-engineer it. Start small and plan to evolve it over time. Don't, the phrase we use is don't boil the ocean. So don't try and do everything all at once, because you'll find once you start moving along the journey of developing your design system, that you're going to make tweaks and changes as you go along. So that's comes to kind of my second point, which is don't be afraid of getting it wrong. Test and learn. And so this is why I say don't try and do it all at once. Get a starting point and start doing some work on some things. Start layering it up and see how it's coming together, and then make those changes that you need to make while it's very early in the process. And just continue that vision of test and learn and iteration all the way through. The other thing I would say is make it clear to the organization that it's not a 2-month project. It's a journey, not a destination. So creating a design system is something that you start, and it will become part of your working practice for your design and development function going forward. And I say that because you'll never capture all of the patterns and elements and components on day one, and you don't want to. You will continually, hopefully, over time, be developing and delivering new things, which means you're going to be adding new things to the system. You're going to find situations where you need to add variants to the things that you've already created in the system. There are things that you're going to want to update. Your branding may change, which may wreak havoc with your look and feel. But hopefully, if you've selected the right tools, changing that will be easy. So you need to communicate to the organization that they're starting off on a journey. They're not delivering a short-term project. The other thing I would say is poor communications can equal a bad experience and low engagement. So make sure that as you begin developing your design system, as you begin using it, communicate that out to people. Let people know what's happening. Let people know what's new in the system. Let people know what's changed in the system. Let people know how to engage with the system. Let them know how the governance process works, and how they can submit things to be added to the system. So communicate. I think communication is really key with a good design system. Everybody needs to kind of be in the loop on that. And I guess the last one I'd said earlier is don't lock yourself in. Select tools that meet your needs today, but can scale. So try and pick things that will allow you to scale as you move forward. So.
Yeah, if I could add 2 others, which are not necessarily pitfalls, but more recommendations. I think it's a different thing to have used a design system and be able to set one up. And even if you have designers in your organization who have already used a design system, I guess getting consulting or recommendation around what suits best your business strategy is definitely an added value, because you will always test and learn, and that's something that you need to know. But by using the right recommendation at the very start, then you also avoid making a lot of mistakes. And then the second one will be, if you are like us and you have a lot of legacy products, I guess it's about also prioritizing right on where you're going to invest and integrate your design system. And it's always easier to start with something new than changing everything that is there. So I guess those will be my 2 personal recommendations based on our experience here at Sopra Banking. Okay, so I think we are running out of time. So thank you everyone for joining. And as I've mentioned at the very start, we are growing our design center of excellence in Paris and London. So if you are interested, we are posting our job board on the link, and keep an eye for it, as we'll be posting a few roles very soon. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.